Hello everyone, my name is Charlie Fees, CDBG Grant Manager with the Pennsylvania Department of Community and Economic Development, also known as DCED. With me is my colleague and fellow CDBG Grant Manager Ian Miller. We are here today to discuss how to use HUD's ACS mapping tool. However, before we get into the tool, your first question may be, why would I use this tool at all? Well, all CDBG activities must meet one of three national objectives. If you're not familiar with the three national objectives, a simple chart here can be found in our CDBG Program Administrative Manual in Chapter 2 on page 21. For the mapping tool, this is most appropriate for qualifying the first national objective of providing benefits to low and moderate income persons. There are a few ways to qualify for this national objective, but the mapping tool is specifically used for helping to qualify area benefit or LMA activities. We recommend that if LMA is the most appropriate, you first check and see if using this data set works to qualify LMA. In order to use the ACS data tool, you first must be able to define the service area of your activity. This means which area of residents will benefit from the activity you're proposing. This needs to be explained and justified in the activity description when you're applying for this specific activity. Once a service area is defined, the next step is to see if it matches, or if, as HUD likes to say, is coterminous with the HUD boundary lines. If the service area is not coterminous with the HUD boundary lines, or the data set says the service area is below 51% LMI, ACS data cannot be used to qualify the activity, and you will instead need to explore the possibility of performing a survey for this particular activity. Some examples of CDBG LMA activities include, but are not limited to, water lines, water towers, street improvements, public parks, and sidewalks. One thing to note, not all of these activities are able to use this tool, but it is definitely a good place to start. Now that we know when to use the ACS data tool, let's see it in action. First, I'll show you how to get to the HUD mapping tool. We've often given the link out with various training materials. In fact, if you go to our website, dced.pa.gov, and then go to our library, then Federal Program Resource Library, American Community Surveys, and then click Hyperlinks for Income Survey Tools. This will take you to a page that has the link for HUD's ACS mapping tool. That is one way to access it. However, we also believe that Googling it would also be another great option. You can Google it on Google Chrome, Microsoft Edge. However, we do recommend Microsoft Edge as it works the most effectively on that server. So if we go here to Google and type in CDBG HUD Mapping Tool, it'll take you to the HUD Exchange website that you want to go to. So from here, you click that. You will then scroll down to low and moderate income survey data sets, and you want to click the link that shows the income summary data for 2011 and 2015. Then you want to go on the right tab right here, and you want to click the map application. This will then take you to the mapping tool, and from here, you want to click this box that says view, and it should take you to the map application. When you're here, it is also best recommended to bookmark this tab so that at that point, it is just one click away from you, and you'll be able to access it without doing all of those searches. One real quick thing to note when you're using the tool, make sure you verify that you're using the correct mapping data set. At the top of the blue banner, it will say 2011, 2015. HUD updates these data sets every 5 years. The current set we're using was released in 2019, so this data set should be effective until 2024. Now that we're here on the map, I'll pass it over to Ian, who will now show you how to navigate it.
Thank you, Charlie, for getting us to the actual HUD mapping tool. And I'm going to walk everyone now through, once we're in here, how do you actually get to the area that you want to, and then also use all the various tools that we have on the side here. You want to go to find the future location of the project idea you have. Hopefully you have a project idea in mind by the time you're looking here. So you want to go on this map to where the tool for that project is. You can do this by either zooming in and finding your area. So we can zoom in here, go down to Pennsylvania area, or you can go to the top right corner and search for the area you're looking for. You can search the top right search box to enter in the name of the county, city, or address of the location if you have an address. Let's look at an example in the city of Monessen. So as you can see, here's the city of Monessen. The mapping tool has several different visual options depending on what you like. So when the tool first opens, it shows a map using satellite images. If we open the base map square, there are several different options to choose from now. Two I would suggest to consider are Imagery Hybrid, which we'll click here, which uses satellite images as well, but adds street names and looks pretty similar to a Google Street View. The second option that grantees often find useful is the Community Map option. This creates a map that's a little cleaner visually and highlights parks, hospitals, cemeteries, etc. So for mapping options, this makes it a little bit easier to look at. And you still have the street names as well. Now let's look at the other option square we have, which is the Lmisd Layering, which toggles different types of geographies. The two we'll talk about today are the block group geography and the places in consolidated cities geography, which are the two most often used. As you can see, they're all selected right now, but we'll take off county and county subdivision. If we select LMISD by block group, it gives you the block groups. And this is the most common geographic type we usually use to qualify LMA projects. The entire United States is broken down into census tracts, and each census tract is further broken down into block groups. Your service area may be one block group or one census tract, or several block groups or census tracts. So back to the city of Monessen, say we have a project that the residents of census tract 8052 block group 2, which would be right over here. If we scroll down, once you click on it, it gives you this pop-up box. Several things you want to look at in this pop-up box, which are a little bit, may not be intuitive when you first look at it. The first one you want to see here is low mod. That is the population of people in this block group that are low to moderate income. So in this case, it's 820. The second one we can look at is the low mod universe, which is just the total population of residents in this block group. So 1050. And then we have low mod PCT, so for percentage. So we can say that 78.1% of the residents of this block group are low to moderate income. So for the LMA national objective, you need to show that at least 51% of the residents in an area, in the service area, are low to moderate income. In this case, if we had a project that was located in census tract 8052 block group 2, and the service area was that block group as well, 58.1 is above 51%. So we could use this data to prove the national objective. So if we were to look in this block group, if we wanted to do a street project on Knoxville Avenue, one could make the case that the beneficiaries of the project of Knoxville Avenue would be this block group. It's important that you make the case in your activity description that that service area is that block group. The fact that Knox Avenue is located in this census tract block group in of itself does not mean that is the service area. Some main streets will have multiple block groups, while dead-end streets may only serve a handful of homes in that street. When applying in your application, it's important to argue why the service area you selected is this block group and is correct. If you go back to the Lmisd layer square over here, another option that is often used is the Lmisd by place and consolidated city. We often refer to these as CDPs, census designated places. And if you were to scroll that gives you a little bit of a wider area. And this is that information, but for the city of Monessen. Unlike census tracts and block groups, which cover the entire United States, CDPs do not cover the entire United States. In fact, a town, township, borough, or city has to request the Census Bureau directly to turn their area into a CDP. This is useful though because they line up with those municipal boundaries. We will stay in the city of Monessen and zoom out here. So luckily, as we can see, the city of Monessen does have a CDP, and the CDP does show that an overall that is over 51% LMI. It shows that it's 61.26, which is above 51%. This means if we had a project area that the primary beneficiaries of which are the residents of the city of Monessen, we could use that to prove the LMA national objective. To give you an example here, let's look at if we wanted to do park improvements, which is an eligible activity under CDBG. We have Monessen City Park. So again, we have to prove that the project service area is, with these different geographies. But for in this case, who are the beneficiaries of the park of the Monessen City Park? Well, it kind of says it in the name. Monessen City Park is for the residents of Monessen. Now, that helps the case, obviously, but we look here as well around the map of the city of Monessen. This park is actually the only park in the city. So it's when you were doing your activity description and you're describing the project and you're describing who the beneficiaries of the project are, you can make that case that, well, this is Monessen City Park. It is the only park in the city of Monessen. Therefore, if we were to do improvements to this park, the beneficiaries of those improvements would be all the residents of the city of Monessen. But what if you have a service area that includes multiple block groups or multiple census tracts? It could be multiple CDPs. That's not as common because oftentimes, like we said, not every area has a CDP. But you'll often find in projects, you could have a service area that is more than one block group or potentially more than one census tract. For situations like that, we're going to go to the select service area square over at the left here, which gives you the ability to select multiple block groups or multiple census tracts. We'll actually go back to the layering and choose block groups again. So you select Lmisd by block group, and then you select one of the tools they have here from the drop down. It gives you multiple ways to select block groups, but I prefer the lasso myself. So once you have that selected, you can basically create an area by selecting this way, and that'll select multiple block groups. So now we have 3 block groups selected. And if you go to the three dots here, you can go to, there's a lot of options here, but we're going to export to CBS file. And this will open up in Excel. Alrighty, and once we have this Excel file pop up, it gives you a lot of data here, but we're really interested in three columns. And the ones we're looking for, again, when we looked at those in the mapping tool, when it had the box that popped up, it's the same data that we're using, but remember it was low mod, which these are the population of people who live in those block groups that are low to moderate income. Then we have low mod universe, so that's the total population of people who live in those block groups. And then here you see again the percentages of the percent of the population that is low to moderate income. So to do a calculation to determine if we add all these three block groups together, does it come out to at least 51% LMI? What we're going to do is a little bit of Excel math here, and we'll walk you through it. And if this is your first time doing stuff in Excel like this, we'll go through here. The first thing we're going to take is we want to take that column, in this case, column L, and which is again, the low to moderate population in all three of those block groups. And we're going to tell Excel to do a calculation for us. And the first thing we want to tell Excel is we say equal sum. And do that right. And then parentheses, and it's L2, which is that first block group that we have. And there you can see it highlighted the low mod population. And then we do L4. And then we close that with parentheses. Now when so you can see there, we've selected those three population numbers, and we're telling Excel to add them all together for us. Now, so if you hit enter, it's going to give you 2,675. Again, those are those three numbers combined together. We want to take that number, and then we have to do essentially the same action again for the total population. So again, this column N is the total population of those block groups. Again, gonna get Excel to do some math for us. So we do equal sum, parentheses, in this case, it's N, and it is on the left-hand corner, you can see 2. So it helps us out, it highlights what cell we're talking about. And we actually want to select those three down. So we do N4, we close with the parentheses, and we hit enter. So all that did was it added those three numbers together. So now we have the total LMI, low to moderate income population in those three block groups, and then we have the total population overall, regardless of income level. So we need to take those two numbers and divide them, because that's going to give us how many, as a percentage, how many the low to moderate income population, how much does that represent of the total population? So you would take, you can just do this kind of math, enter it in, 2,675. We divide that by 3,780. And that gives us 0.70, gives you a few numbers, 7672. So that would be 70.76% LMI, which is well above 51% LMI. So in this case, if you had a project that you could show, again, you have to prove that the service area is those three block groups together, but you could show that that is the service area of a project. you can then show through this data that it meets that threshold of being at least 51% low moderate income. And in this case, we're actually showing just a hair over 70% low to moderate income. So let's pull out of the Excel file and go back to the mapping tool. Now that we've gone over how to select multiple block groups, and again, we can do that for census tracts as well, use that lasso tool to really select as many as you want. The next thing we can talk about is a helpful feature for displaying the information. Now, if you have a GIS team or even just a GIS person who is knowledgeable on how to use that mapping tool, you can use this tool to determine if the data supports your argument, and then talk to the GIS people, and they can create very pretty maps which are useful to us. But we realize not every grantee has access to those resources. So if you don't have access to those GIS resources, this tool can also help you display and create some maps that you can then put into your application. And some things you can do before you actually print this out is you can create highlight areas, pinpoints, and things of that nature. That is over here in the add your own label square. So let's go back to the first block group we talked about, which was census tract 8052 and block group 2, and we talked about the possibility of doing a street project on Knox Avenue. So you have this map, it shows you Knox Avenue, and it shows you the lines of the block group, but some additional visual things you can put in here to make the map a little bit better. Again, if you go to add your own label, and there's several different options here. For in case of a street map, a street project, you could use the line feature and select a line color, whatever color you want or thickness you want. So whatever your preferences are, and you could go here and say, this is a good example of this, because maybe your project isn't doing the entire street of Knoxville or Knox Avenue, you are just doing a portion of the street. Well, you could say, okay, well, our project is going to be from Ross Traver Street to halfway through. So you can say Knox Avenue, but to give you some more detail, it's going to be here and it's going to stop at this intersection. So now we know when your grant manager reviews this, they know, well, this project is not, although we're saying Knox Avenue, doesn't include this portion, it would just be this portion of the street that we're redoing. Some other tools that you can hear to just add labels. Maybe it's not a street project, maybe it's just a park or something of that nature. You can add points here. So these are just things that can be helpful for when you submit these apps, you have this map and gives us a little bit more indication of where things are, and this makes it easier on your grant manager when they're looking at this stuff. Another feature they have is text. So this would allow you to add text actually to the map as well. So if you want to pinpoint something or you want to highlight. So another option they have under the add your own labels is text. And again, just another tool that can make the map more easy to understand. So under the text, you would enter in whatever you want to display on the map. In this case, we'll do Knox Ave, and then you would simply click there. So that would be information you could add to the map, which will make it easier to read. There's a couple different shapes here as well that you can use, and there's even one where you can kind of create your own customized shape. So depending on what you want to emphasize or what you want to make aware to whoever's looking at this map and highlight, you can use these different shapes. Once you have that all kind of selected, the last feature is just the print square, which does exactly what it sounds like. In this case, we'll hit print. You select here. And it creates kind of a PDF file of what you were looking at when you hit print. So you can take this, you can save it, you can print it out, and you can put this in your application to give your grant manager a good idea of where the project is, what you're planning. This has the block group lines. In fact, one of the things you could put in the text would be the LMI percentage and the LMI numbers as well. It even gives you, when this was generated. So looking at this project for Knox Avenue in Census Tract 8052, Block Group 2, we had printed out the map. We were able to highlight the area of the street that we'd like to do. Your next step, we're going to take a look at the actual activity description page. So this is the page that comes in with every activity, and it's one of the first things your grant manager is going to look at when they go to review an activity, and we'll show you where to actually put this information. So in the case of this Knox Avenue example, the low mod is 820, the universe is 1050, and that creates a percentage of 78.1%. So we would go over here, and I'll have the activity description page. This should look familiar to you if you've submitted other projects in the past. But in this case, we're using ACS data under the benefits test here, and we want to click off, so that's what we're using. What was the census tract? It was 8052. What was the block group? It was block group 2. CDP, that's if we were doing a project for the entire city of Monessen, you would leave CT and block group blank because we're not using those, we're using a CDP, and then in there you would type in city of Monessen. But in this case, for the Knoxville Avenue project, we're using census tract 8052, block group 2, so you'll leave CDP blank because we're not using that one. So the area population, if you remember on the other side, it was 1050. The LMI population, I'll have to go back here. What was that again? It was 820. And that creates a LMI percentage of 78.10. Go back here just to confirm right here. So you take those numbers and you hit it over here to this activity description page. Obviously, you want to fill out the rest of this activity description as well. We have the project type, in this case, it'd be a street project. So you would say street project. And then on page 2, as we talked about, we have describing the project, describing the issue, describing how you're going to fix it, and describing question 4, the primary beneficiaries. This is the place where we talked about a little bit early in the presentation. You're going to prove that not just that block group is LMI, but the beneficiaries, the service area of this project actually is that block group. So why is that the case? Up here you're saying it is, but defend that proposition. Why is the service area of this street project going to be, and the beneficiaries primarily benefit residents of census tract 8052, block group 2. So what happens if you go through this process and you're come up with an idea for a project and you select the block group that you want to do, and let's move over here in the city to some different block groups. Let's say you had a project that was actually over here on the kind of southeastern side of the city of Menneson, which is census tract 8055 block group 1, and we scroll down here and it has a low mod percentage of 30.89. Now, what are we trying to prove again? We want to prove that the service area has an LMI percentage of 51% or higher. In this case, this block group, according to the ACS data, does not meet that threshold. So in this case, if you had a project that was the service area, we wouldn't be able to use the ACS data to prove the national objective. What are your options at that point? Well, if the ACS data is not able to be used, you can switch over to a survey, and that can happen either you're going to say the service area is this block group, and although the ACS data set is not 51% LMI, I'm going to prove that wrong through my survey, and I'm going to survey the people in this block group either through a census survey where you're going to try to survey everybody, or through a random sample survey where you're going to get a percentage of the people in this block group. And through our survey, prove that it actually is 51% LMI. If you do go that route and you can show that, then HUD will accept your survey over their own data. Another reason you might have to pivot to a survey is if your service area is actually smaller than a individual block group, or just doesn't really line up with any of the block groups. In this particular block group we're looking at, say for example, we have Pioneer Drive. Pioneer Drive, and I don't know if that's a residence or not, but if we wanted to do this road, the service area is probably much smaller than the entire block group. So if you have dead-end streets are kind of the big prime example. Dead-end street typically is only going to benefit the people who live on that street, which is probably going to be smaller than the block group. So if your service area is not coterminous with these block groups or with any of the geographies there, then you may have to pivot to doing a survey to be able to prove that 51% LMI for the LMA, the low to moderate area national objective. The other option, obviously, is to look at some of the other national objectives. Charlie showed that table earlier in the presentation. So if you wanted to pivot to housing rehab under LMH, where you're going to individually qualify homes, or you had a project that might qualify under LMC, low to moderate clientele, where we're helping specific populations. So in projects like that, we're not saying this project is going to help everyone in an area. We're helping a specific population. That's a process you can go through as well. So some kind of different options if this mapping tool does not help you prove that an area is 51% LMI. So that is an overview of the HUD mapping tool. I encourage everyone to go in here to click around. There's a couple other options and features that we didn't get to discuss. There's more labeling options. There is, different types of selections for service areas, but and obviously there's a lot of different imagery tools that you could use. So whatever you can click through here and whatever visually you works for you or that makes the case for the project can be helpful. So one additional resource you can go to for more information on how to use this tool, HUD actually came out with a video as well that walks you through it. The easiest way to get to that video, which is actually on YouTube, again, Charlie showed earlier, if you go through Google and you were to type in CDBG HUD Mapping Tool and go through that process, you'll have this video here and you click play, and that's actually Robert Peterson from HUD, who goes into some detail about how the 51% LMA threshold and uses the tool as well. So you can watch that video to get kind of more information on this HUD mapping tool. Hopefully you found this video useful. And if you have any further questions after watching this, we advise you to reach out to your CDBG grant manager. And I hope you have a great rest of the day.